We have sought comfort in the words of Psalms. I invite Rabbi Todd Chisner, Roberta and Derek's rabbi from Temple, Judea, to lead us in a recitation of Psalms.
May Marvin's memory be for a blessing, and may these words, which were originally written by King David in a time of his need, in a time of his need to turn to God and feel that sense of protection, be here for each of you as a source of comfort and consolation. Adonai roi lo echsar, binot asher bitzeni amei menuchoti nahaleni, nafshi shovev, yancheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech b'geitz hamavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi. Shiftecha u'mishantecha, hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorarai. Teshanta b'shem roshi kosida revaya, ach tov v'chesed yurdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And let us say together, Amen.
Death has cast its dark shadow over the sanctuary. It has left us all deeply bereft. A voice has been stilled, a heart has been stopped. Laughter has departed and joy has fled. Gone are the warmth and the glow of a loved one's presence. The chain of love has lost a vital link. Death has taken a life which was precious and has brought us pain and loneliness and sorrow. And yet there is so much which death cannot touch, so much over which it has no dominion. Death cannot rob us of our past, the years, the dreams, the experiences which we shared. And death cannot ever take from us the love that we knew. It is woven into the tapestry of our lives. The lessons Marvin taught us we shall continue to cherish. We shall cling to the wisdom which lives on. What we have had, we shall always possess. And what we have known, we shall always hold dear. Death cannot take from us our abiding trust that God will give us strength to endure what we must. And death cannot ever take from us our sustaining hope that darkness will yield to light and hurt give way to healing. Death cannot take from us the comforting faith that with God, every soul is precious, none is ever lost. And so even in our sorrow, as we prepare to bring Marvin to his final resting place, we thank the Lord our God for bringing Marvin into this world and creating this beautiful family, for all the experiences, for all the memories, for our trust and for our faith. For these, we believe, need never be lost. These and so much more, death cannot take from us.
In the Jewish calendar, this is a significant time, as we observed Rosh Chodesh Adar just a few days ago. And ironically, in the Jewish calendar, this is a time of joy. Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. As Adar begins, our tradition demands that we increase our joy. Be happy. It's Adar. But how do I tell that to you? Today we in this sanctuary gather to mourn the loss of Marvin Levine. How dare we counsel joy at a time of such sadness and loss? It may be true that in a few days this very sanctuary will be filled with laughter and joy, children marching in costumes as they joyously celebrate Purim, but today, this sanctuary is a place of sadness and loss. Today we mourn the death of a good man, a loving husband, a beloved father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and friend. Adar has begun, and yet we are sad. How do we reconcile these conflicting emotions of joy and sorrow? But in truth, this is the nature of life. Life rarely comes packaged as happy times and sad times. Often we are called upon to make transitions from joy to sorrow and sorrow to joy in the blink of an eye, in the turn of a moment. One moment, the Jews of Shushan were sitting on the ground dressed in sackcloth and ashes, anticipating their imminent destruction, and the next, they are celebrating their salvation. And so, we too, who are heartbroken over the death of Marvin Levine, find ourselves moving back and forth between the pain of loss and the joy of remembering his life. One moment we are moved to tears, the next to laughter over a memory of his long and productive life. And both of these feelings are appropriate and necessary as we grapple with our feelings and emotions at this time of parting. Marvin loved life. He loved his life and he loved his family. And I suspect that Marvin, more than any of us here, would have understood this juxtaposition of joy and sorrow, as it was his life experience over these last number of years. There was such sadness and frustration over his diminishing physical condition, but such joy that he was still with us, still able to embrace his family and to be there for so many moments of joy and celebration. So it becomes clear to us, as it must have been abundantly clear to Marvin, that life is about finding the joy in the midst of the sorrow and the triumph in the midst of the challenge. We gather today to pay tribute to him, to a life well lived. And in the spirit of Purim, we will mourn and celebrate at the same time. We mourn our loss and celebrate that we had the good fortune to know one of such good quality. I want to, at this time, call his family to come forward to share some words of tribute and love.
Thank you for joining us today as we honor the life of Marvin R. Levine, a man of strength, compassion, and wisdom who is very dear to us all. We chose to gather and remember Marvin, Dad, Papi, in this sacred place because it was here that he marked many happy life cycle events for almost 50 years. Many of you know that Marvin valiantly fought a long battle with a debilitating disease. And as we mourn this profound loss today, we also celebrate his extraordinary life. Marvin was born on December 30th, 1927, in Newark, New Jersey, to Russian immigrants Ethel and Grant Levine. Not too long after, a sister, Eileen, joined the family, and they crossed the river to settle in Corona, Queens. The Levine family opened and then ran a small candy store, and it was here that Marvin's entrepreneurial spirit was born. Marvin studied accounting at NYU, where fate led him to meet Charlotte's cousin, Adele. She helped him to obtain a summer job at the Hotel Rosedale in the Catskills. The hotel's formidable owners, Charles and Ida Friesner, Charlotte's parents, put him to work as a bellhop. After all, he was only a 19-year-old student. But when romance blossomed between Charlotte and Marvin, Ida promoted him to bookkeeper. Now he was a suitable suitor. Before long, Marvin proposed, and they married on March 19th, 1950, at the Park Terrace in the Bronx. To Charlotte's everlasting dismay, the wedding was planned for a Sunday because the Levines had to keep the store open on Saturday night to sell the Sunday paper. The young couple then moved to an apartment on Linden Boulevard in Brooklyn, just a few floors apart from Charlotte's older sister Miriam. From the beginning of their life together, being close to family was the most important thing to Charlotte and Marvin, and that remains true to this day. Being an accountant was fun, but Marvin had more ambitious ideas. Once, he had a job driving a pickle truck, and for several months, he worked in a chicken market. But he dreamed of being his own boss and decided that becoming an independent insurance agent would complement his accounting background. At only 25 years of age, fresh insurance license in hand, he opened a storefront in a large new apartment complex in Great Neck. Ever shrewd, Marvin observed that a large number of returning Korean War veterans were settling there, and he saw the opportunity to become both their accountant and insurance agent. Marvin guided his professional life with the motto, "Strike while the iron is hot." Marvin could go to Manhattan in the morning to see a client, then return to his office in Great Neck, only to turn right back around upon receiving yet another call from another prospective client in Manhattan. It was with this mindset that he grew his business from a small desk in his crowded one-bedroom apartment to the thriving third-generation business that it is today. Marvin treated his employees like family, and in turn, they respected and loved him. His career, now solidly off the ground, Marvin and Charlotte welcomed daughter Marilyn in 1953. 4 years and 4 months later, Roberta was born. And exactly 4 years and 4 months after that, Richard entered the scene, proving that accountants are always precise in their calculations. But getting back to Brooklyn, in 1957, their cozy one-bedroom nest barely fit a family of 4. While they eyed a larger 2-bedroom in the same building, Marvin again had another idea. "Work with me," he said to Charlotte, convincing her that by staying put, their goal of buying a home would come true sooner rather than later. Charlotte did agree, and by 1959, they bought a home in a new community in Baldwin where they intended to remain forever. This type of joint decision-making formed the basis for more than 65 years of a successful marriage. In Baldwin, their family thrived, and they made lifelong friends. So content in their South Shore enclave, they even invested in a custom-designed built-in barbecue. But as their life together prospered, in 1968, the family, with their dog Duchess in tow, moved on up to Roslyn. They kept their friends, but left the barbecue behind. In Roslyn, Marvin and Charlotte continued to raise their family, and their 3 children were married right here on this bima. They welcomed Lisa, Lenny, and Derek, and soon enough, Marvin became a beloved papi to 9 grandchildren: Cal, Shay, Indy, Adam, Seth, Max, Aaron, Emily, and Ethan. Later still, they welcomed Daniel and Matt and their very first great-grandchild, Grayson. As our family has grown up, professional and educational opportunities have dispersed us across the country. And yet, distance does not deter our joining forces together for special occasions or really any occasion. In fact, last night we all rushed to gather to honor Marvin's legacy at one of his favorite restaurants, Piccolo Venezia in Astoria. This is exactly the way he would have wanted it. And Charlotte still picked up the bill. Marvin was also a history buff. After reading Exodus, he was intent upon visiting Israel. None of their friends had gone there, so they would be pioneers. Again, he convinced a reluctant Charlotte to work with him, and they went off on a 3-week journey with a new Nikon camera in hand. As circumstances would have it, the year was 1967, and their trip collided with the onset of the Six-Day War, causing Charlotte and Marvin to be evacuated. Upon their safe return to New York, Marvin took his Israeli slideshow on the road. He visited schools, synagogues, and even a hospital to share the beauty of the Promised Land. This was the start of their love of travel, together and also with their family. Regular family vacations became occasions for the 3 generations to bond. On an early trip to Puerto Rico, Marvin and Charlotte rented a car and promptly got lost. French-speaking Marvin got really lost, while Spanish-speaking Charlotte saved the day by getting directions from a local. Marvin, not one to be outdone, came home and taught himself Spanish using records on his phonograph. His love of languages didn't end with French and Spanish. You could often hear him intersperse his conversations with Hebrew, Yiddish, and Italian. Even if the context wasn't always exactly correct, he certainly was clever. He had a set of phrases that we called Marvinisms. For example, when we went out to an Italian dinner, when he was finished, he would say, "Basta pasta." When the bottle of wine was finished, he would say, "Muerte," and place it in the wine bucket head first. When he had a late lunch or an early supper, he'd call it lupper. A bumpy car ride would result in the declaration "Shuckle nicht," and his grandkids would laugh hysterically. Marvin also witnessed history. Like many men of his generation, Marvin was a huge New York sports fan. Though he loved the Giants, he would attend any baseball game he could. So one day, he went to watch the Yankees play the Indians. This was the very day that Bob Feller pitched a no-hitter. As thrilling as this was, he couldn't tell a soul he witnessed history, as he had cut school that day. But it was not enough for Marvin to just experience and witness history. He had to collect it as well. He collected history-themed books and videotapes by the thousands, much to Charlotte's dismay. But his true passion was his currency collection. You might not know that long ago, banks used to print their own bills reflecting their name and location. Marvin amassed a unique collection focusing on 3 areas. The first was banks with strange names like Glen Campbell, Pennsylvania. The second was a Massachusetts collection where his eldest daughter and her family settled. But his pride was his New York State collection, for which he was recognized with a full-page article in Newsday in 1983. And Marvin shared his interests with his grandchildren. He had an office in the lower level of their home, and in it he kept part of his collection. Whenever his grandchildren came over, they would inevitably find themselves sitting in his office learning something new. And the grandchildren found other things in there too. an old adding machine from his accounting days, and a brass key to the door of the candy store in Queens. His office was a treasure trove for his grandkids to explore. And each thing found came with a story from Marvin. You've heard that Marvin was a dedicated family man, a hardworking businessman, a collector, and perhaps even a linguist. But what you might not have known is that he was our superhero. When Richard graduated NYU, Marvin, of course, went into the city to help him pack up his room. But this, being a Marvin story, it did not end so simply. And of course, this being a Richard anecdote, there are a lot of things to move home. Thank you. In the midst of loading the car, a would-be thief came out of nowhere and grabbed Richard's typewriter out of the trunk. Marvin, not one to allow injustice to prevail, gave chase down Broadway and tackled the guy. He returned triumphantly to the car, typewriter in hand. Charlotte, on the other hand, thought he was out of his mind. Marvin was a giving person and generous with all of his resources. In the latter part of his life, this kindness was returned. In his final years at the Parker Jewish Institute for healthcare and rehabilitation, a day didn't go by without a visit from a family member. We are so grateful for the extraordinary care he received from the entire staff at Parker and for the compassion and respect they afforded to our family. We are also eternally grateful to Pauline and Yvette, Marvin's personal caregivers, for their many years of selfless dedication to his well-being. It's amazing how a romance in the summer of 1946 blossomed into this beautiful, large, and loving family. We are grateful to have each other and especially to have Charlotte, aka Baba. For many years, she devoted herself to Marvin's care, preserving his dignity and protecting the family's privacy during these trying times. Although we will miss him dearly, his legacy endures. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your words of tribute and love. Thank you for the insight into the special man that we have gathered to honor and remember today. This service is being held in our Temple Beth Shalom sanctuary. It is intended as a sign of honor and respect. Marvin and Charlotte were dedicated to this place and our tradition for over 50 years. How appropriate that their children now continue their legacy. How appropriate that Charlotte and Marvin had the nachas to see their children maintain a commitment to Judaism, to see Richard serve as president of this respected congregation in whose sanctuary we now honor his memory today. Misha Nichnas Adar, at this season of joy, we mourn the loss of a dear friend, a loved one whose absence is keenly felt. but we also rejoice at this time of rejoicing that we were privileged to know his love and share his life. O God, let us bring thy children out of the darkness and the shadow of death. We thank thee for the life of Marvin Levine, in whose understanding we were guided and in whose tenderness we were healed. May the sureness of his nearness to us banish loneliness from our hearts, and the sureness of his nearness to thee, O God, quiet our anxious spirit. Be with those who most poignantly and most painfully feel the pangs of this hour. With Charlotte, with his children, Marilyn and Lenny, Roberta and Derek, Richard and Lisa, with his grandchildren, Cal and Danielle, Shay and Matt, Indy, Adam, Seth, Max, Aaron, Emily, and Ethan, and with his great-grandson, Grayson. With all the family and friends, comfort and strengthen their hearts, guide and direct their lives, help them to know that deeper than the pains, the frustration, and even the mystery of death are your everlasting arms of love and mercy. Grant them steadfastness of purpose, faith in thee, and courage to face life. Give them the wisdom to say with understanding the ancient words of submission and resignation, perhaps the wisest words that could be said in an hour such as this. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Lord, you have given, and now you have called unto yourself. We praise thee, O God, for the courage to make our broken hearts an altar before which we may acknowledge thy sovereignty and love. May thy name be praised now and forevermore, and let us say, Amen. Would you please rise for the memorial prayer?
מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע הזהירים לנשמת מאיר בן גרונם הלוי שהלך לעולמו. בעבור שאנו מתפללים ביד הזכרת נשמתו בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו. לכן בעל הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפך לעולמים וצרור ביצור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח ושלום על משכבו. ונאמר
O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Meir ben Gruam Halevi, to the soul of Marvin Levine, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and the righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he now rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Interment will be immediately following in the New Montefiore Cemetery, following which the Shiva will be observed at Charlotte and Marvin's home, 60 Birch Drive in Roslyn. The family will be there after the cemetery until 5 p.m. this evening for those wishing to express condolences. The Shiva will resume after Shabbat until around 9 o'clock tomorrow night. And then Sunday through Wednesday, mourners are, those who wish to extend comfort are invited to come between the hours of 1 and 4 and 7 and 9. And there will be services Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 8 p.m. We invite the pallbearers to come forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes services here. If you're joining us at the cemetery, we're going to be lining up alongside the temple. If you're going to the cemetery, we're going to ask that you put your flashing lights on. So if you can please step directly to your cars, we're going to be lining up